But fabulous to have you all here. We're just letting some people come on. Um, I've put some links in there, and Adam also did. We've only got Adam for about the first 15 or 20 minutes. He's got a lot to do. So he's going to be off sharing his wonderful gifts and skills in other places and needs to go catch a flight. So he put in his website, which is iamadambauer.com. And you can see that in the chat for those of you who are live. For those of you on the recording, I am Adam Bauer, BAUER.com gives you all the skinny on Adam. And also his India trip, which is under there. You can find that on his website as well. And there's a direct link to it. He's got 4 spaces left for a beautiful trip to India. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that before he leaves and before I natter on by the end of the call.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to go next January. So thank you all for being here. I know there's a lot of people that are still coming on, but let's just jump on in. And Adam, please do. I can ask you some questions, but we already kind of talked about the
Ask me,
general idea.
ask me
Ask you?
questions.
Does anyone have a question for Adam? I'll start. But please do drop it in the chat or just come on and say hi. It's a community. This is a community thing. It's not just us talking. I'll start you off by just saying for beginners who who are new to chanting, why chanting, and what language is it in, and where's it all from, and why did you start with it? Why do you
Excellent.
do what you do?
Okay. I'll take the first 45 minutes to discuss the 3 questions and then move on. Chanting, I mean, of course, cultures, societies, people all over the world have sung and chanted from the beginning. So it meets a basic human need to use our voices to gather with each other and to speak together and to sing together. It comes and meets us at a very primal place. The kind of call and response devotional chanting that I've devoted much of my life to over the last 25 years almost comes from the Indian yoga tradition, specifically the Bhakti yoga tradition, which is the yoga of devotion. And there's many practices, many flavors, many shades of that practice, but one of the fundamental kind of building block practices that are shared by many different traditions within the devotional yoga universe in India is they all like to chant. They all sing scripture and song and mantra, which are basically the names of the divine reality. India has a special emphasis culturally and spiritually in sort of noticing and identifying and naming and categorizing the almost endless number of ways that the sacred reality of life expresses itself and shines forth in the world. And and they've given names to many of these divine forms, and many of these we're familiar with if we have a passing familiarity with yogi. We've heard of Krishna, we've heard of Shiva, we've heard of Shakti, we've heard of Ganesha. These are some of the many different names that are given to describe different aspects of the one reality, which is really, I've heard it described recently actually in a book that I forget the name of and in a podcast I was just listening to the other day, more from a kind of Greco-Roman perspective, the religion that has no name. So all of the different ways that humans from time immemorial have tried to wrap our minds around what is going on here on this planet and how do we fit into it. And there seems to be somebody home here. There seems to be some intelligence, some grace, some beauty that is operating through the world. And how do we build a relationship with that? And how do we navigate our life keeping that in heart and in mind? So the bhakti yogis, the devotional practitioners of India, for thousands of years, have used this chanting practice as one of the fundamental ways that we can align ourselves with this fundamental reality that we are an inherent part of. It's not outside of us, it lives really inside of us and outside of us. And I can't really tell you how it works, honestly, Meredith, because I don't understand how it works, but I've seen for almost 25 years that it works. That when we get together with our friends or in community, even if we're not yet friends, and we chant these mantras, these names of the divine, it opens and activates something inside of us. It softens something inside of us. It helps us remember some aspects of who we really are and that we all are family together. You know, it looks so compelling, this idea that we're all different people in different bodies, but at some deeper level, it's like they talk about those aspen groves in Colorado where you've got, you know, hundreds of acres of aspen, but it's actually one being. It's not 10 million different trees. It's all coming from kind of the root structure. It's all coming from the mycelial level connection that ties us all together. I think we're kind of like that. You know, we look like different bodies, we look like individual trees, and it looks very convincing. But at a deeper spiritual level, we are all expressions of this deeper oneness. And there's something about the chanting that helps that feel real in a way that I sometimes struggle to find in other practices. So I think the why is that it seems to just work. You know, it's not for everybody. It's not for you, you know, no harm, no foul. But for many of us, that there's something about it, even if we can't quite put our finger on how it works or why, there's something about the chanting that is beautiful and magical and softening and sweetening of our
Mm-hmm.
lives. So that's why Indians have done it. That's why it's spreading around the world because other people realize, like, oh, this practice works and I can do it. I don't
Yeah.
need to specialize. I don't need to be extra smart. I don't need to be able to twist my body. I don't need to do any of that. All I need to do is be willing to hang out with people in some comfortable position and sing.
And sing or not sing, even just like relax on the floor and let the energy of the room kind of move. I saw Snatam Kaur last night, just as an interesting coincidence. I went to a beautiful church here in Toronto, and
Yeah.
it was packed. And I've heard her music before. I go for that feeling that it actually reminded me as you were talking. I pulled up something I clipped from somewhere. It said, "Did you know that you can't have thoughts while humming? When you hum, you are creating a space between your thoughts and your nervous system. This can help you regulate to feel less anxious and overwhelmed." And I know we've known each other, I don't know how long, like maybe 8 or 10 years, maybe even by
Oh,
now.
longer than that, I think. But yeah,
Really? Wow.
I was going to guess 15, but what do I know?
Okay. Time flies. And I've always been drawn to music, and so over the years, because you've known me for a long time, I think you've seen me get even more and more drawn to the world of chanting and sound and voice. And I'm leaving myself to go on a trip to take 2 workshops that are very all about that, working with a lot of different teachers of voice and healing. And there's a lot of sound healing programs out now as well. And so there's this big science of why it works and how it works. And in that regard, I'm going for the sensory experience. And sitting last night in this, it's what I find beautiful when you were talking about the room of people that you sit with. There is a resonance. I always talk about this neural nectar in the body that we get to when we get down to a particular area, and it's where the parasympathetic nervous system really kicks in. And there's a beautiful sense of what I call neural nectar. And sitting in that room, I was just, I can even feel emotional thinking about it. There was one song, and so many people have their eyes closed, and everyone's singing. There were hundreds of people there, and just the kind of energy that builds. And it was like I could literally feel, just like doing an embodiment practice, where things were just falling off of me, and getting down to a very vulnerable place, and tears started coming out of my eyes because it just felt so open. And I really feel so much that this there's a lot of people I know that are coming on the call who are in my Fractal Frequencies program, which is really just a program to get us doing a daily practice, because it's such a form of activism. And we'll go into that more later when you're off the call. But um I do it more as kind of a growing community, because there's a lot of people doing this sort of thing of growing community, using voice, using to prayer and sound to get into this very sacred space. And I'm excited to go to India with you next year, and And to have us in France again as well. I shouldn't forget to mention that. In June, you're coming again with us to the retreat in France, which has a lot of magic in all of that. And you were just there recently as well, doing some of your own pilgrimaging. And I'm going to be doing the same thing in November. And Adam comes and we do morning meditations where you just hear his amazing voice and that resonance, and we sit in meditation, and that's how we start our days. And he also does a lot of kirtan at the end of the day and talking about the whole bhav and the practice that he works with. So I don't know, do you want to share a little bit more in whatever direction about what happened in France when you were there, or anything?
Well, I think maybe because I'm so looking forward to joining you again in that sacred area of southern France. When I went down there with you, what was that, 2 years ago? That was the first time I'd really explored down there, and I went back for half a week this past summer while I had a few days in between my summer Europe touring schedule to keep kind of going deeper into that place. And I think the piece that comes to share is really just what an honor and blessing it is when we get a chance to gather and dive deep and explore together. That there really is something magical about coming together and sharing the experience together. When I do it
Yeah.
myself, I also love that. I often prefer to travel alone. I can really be follow my own kind of heart song as it moves. But there's something about being together in special places, in sacred places, and kind of opening ourselves to the spontaneous kind of uh, eruption of whatever it is that starts moving through us when
Mhm.
we when we place ourselves in a place and time with a small community of people and be willing to float downstream of whatever that river is that arises to catch us, and that it's just it's special to be involved in, and I'm super looking forward to joining you again because I think your work is fabulous and unique. I don't know anybody who approaches movement in the body in such an accessible and natural way. So I'm always happy to have the time with you just for my own selfish benefit and the joy of being in that space, and then being in southern France and everything that we get to enjoy being in that special place, and
Mhm.
then to gather together as we do every day and practice and move and stretch and talk and sing. I'm just super psyched to be joining you again, so super looking forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Ani Williams will be coming as well again to do the beautiful work that she does around voice and how we talk in certain areas of the voice, and the areas that we don't talk in, and the importance of actually using all ranges of the voice. She gives us a whole workshop on that. And just before you sing for us, because I'm grateful you're going to do a song for us before you leave. I just want to ask you, do you remember when we were there? And a lot of times people have emotional releases in class as you know, nothing scary, but just different things will come up. And
Let's
do you
move.
remember there was one morning when we were doing a meditation and I ended up having this whole kind of like little cry fest to myself. And then everybody left after when meditation was over and I stayed there for a while. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring that up because this is a whole a part of the land where Mary Magdalene is very well known. The whole culture is very sure that she came over in a boat with the other Marys after Christ was crucified, and there's a whole bunch of lore in the land, and that's what we're there to explore as well. And I really have been drawn to the area and not really known why. And I've read a couple of the books, and certainly Kathleen McGowan's trilogy is pretty fascinating to read. I love reading fiction that also blends history and tells a great tale. So if any of you are wanting
I loved
to,
her books.
yeah, yeah, her books are amazing. Um, and and I'm saying this because I don't want to sound like I don't really I don't and I've said this in my newsletter. I don't really jump on the bandwagon of Magdalene kinds of things. For me, I need direct experience, but I'm curious, like what's in the land. It keeps drawing me back. And when I had that experience, and I guess I'm letting you know because I don't know if you knew how powerful that was for me. It's really stayed with me.
Mm.
I had a lot of emotion come up that morning, and I ended up being in tears. And after, the meditation was over, I just stayed there, and I had a really powerful download of an experience that felt so feminine and just blew my heart open, and gave me some really interesting information. And one piece of it that will always stay with me is that trying to avoid pain and sadness is the opposite, because if you go into it, this is where the temple space is. And it was a sensory experience, and it took my whole body over. And that picture, I'm not a Catholic, I don't follow religions, but that picture of Christ opening his shirt and pointing to his heart all of a sudden made so much sense to me. And that to me was like some living legend in the land that gave me that information. So I'm so intrigued by that part of the world that I'm seriously considering, because I've been thinking about moving to France for many years, of locating in that area, because there's so much there. So I just wanted to share that while we're here together. If you want to share a song before you have to run and jump on a plane, I know everyone would really love it. And if anyone has a quick question or comment for Adam, if you can maybe just drop it in the chat so we can try to catch him by the time he finishes his song, that would, I think, be the best way to make sure he stays on schedule.
Sounds great. Yeah, this will be a brief one. Usually these songs last 10 or 20 minutes when we gather and sing, but I actually do have a plane to catch, so I'll keep it relatively brief for today. Thanks again for the invitation to join you, and nice to be with you all. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. I will say these are usually call and response chants, but if you want to sing along with me, since we're all muted, if you want to sing along either with my call or in response, please feel free. Then we're deeper to the actual practice. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. 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 Sitaram, 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 Sitaram. Jai Jai Ram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Jai Jai Ram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Jai Jai Ram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Jai Jai Ram.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Have a safe and beautiful journey as you carry on, sharing more of your wonderful resonance of sound. Thank you
Thank
for being in my life. Thank you for coming next year as well. And I will talk to you again very soon.
Sounds good. Wish I could stay with you for the rest of the hour, but nice to briefly be with you all and have a wonderful day. Thanks so much, Meredith.
Thank you. Mwah. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Kim. Bye, Jimmy.
It's another thing that at the show last night, there was a lot of applause. I mean, Snatam Kaur is very well known in that community, and she got a standing ovation as soon as she came on, and rightfully so, because they're beautiful musicians, and of course you want to praise the musicians because it's so incredible. But traditionally, there's silence at the end because there's so much resonance that starts to happen in the body. And when you really have that kind of call and response happening, you go into a real sort of trance state. It's very beautiful. And just being able to sit afterwards and just kind of bathe in that. I keep using that word nectar because that's really what it feels like. And in that nectar, that sensory experience is where speaking for myself, I just get so much calm and um, guidance and heightened intuition and creativity. It's the source of so many things. So, in most places, when you're doing call and response sorts of things, there's not applause afterwards. It's just that silence. And I actually found it a little bit distracting, as much as they certainly all deserved huge accolades and applause. That one song where I was just really sort of blown open, having hundreds of people erupt into applause is sort of like it sort of stopped the experience for me because it's moving us into a different energy. Um, so yeah, so it's much more meditative, certainly when we're gathering and doing that. And most kirtans, if you're not familiar with them, when you go to them, will commonly not have that. I had one with very dear friends, Ina V and Howard Lip, who did some a beautiful kirtan concert for one of my birthdays. And my friend was sitting next to me. She said, "Why isn't everybody clapping?" Because it was so quiet. So I don't know how many of you are in, and I can't see all of you because you don't all have your video on. So I don't know. You can also just do a little hand up if you go over where the tools are on your Zoom thing. But how many of you are actually in my Fractal Frequencies program who are on the call today? I know a lot of people are going to be stopping in the recording, but Kat, you are? That's good to know. Good to see you. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Good. Great. Okay. So the purpose of that is um, I had originally started doing a program for Nassim Haramein on his art crystal and looking at what the science of crystals are and his crystal. And then in the end, they wanted to really just focus on all of his physics. And so they said, can you just be an affiliate for that program? And that didn't really feel like that was exactly what the program was crafted for. So I really spent last year sitting with like, what is this program and it was a fascinating journey, just letting the creative process slowly unwind. And um, it began to really show me what matters to me the most. And you'll hear me talk about this frequently. I really feel that this kind of practice for those of us, and the majority of my clientele is largely women and women who feel a lot, women who have that. So I was talking to somebody the other day, a client, and she was saying, I walk into the forest and the trees are happy. I can feel the trees. And we're not really taught that that's okay to feel these kinds of things, but that's sensory awareness or a drawing to practices of this nature uh, are where we're lucky that we have the time and the luxury, so to speak, when so many people don't. So many people are in survival mode. So many people are in states of deep crisis. And if we have the ability to feel and ground ourselves and learn from this process, from the wisdom of our own bodies, it's not a luxury and it's not a self-care thing. To me, it's foundationally an absolute activism. And every time we sit and every time we chant or pray or watch geometry moving or do breath work, I put a whole bunch of different modalities into the program whether you want to work on your own body, whether you want to stretch, whether you are a crystal person and you want to use crystal, whatever it is, what inspires you to want to sit down for 5 minutes? And you don't have to take my program to know what that is or to follow it. I used it as a guide. The reason that I'm bringing it up is because one day I was in my room here and I was just in practice and I was in this really open position and all of a sudden this whole message dropped in. It's not a program, it's a movement. And I thought, well, that feels like way too big. I'm not creating a movement. I mean, I'm not no there's not going to be thousands of people following me in a movement. Like that's a rather big ask. And but I realized that it was something that I needed to start to create community around. So it's not just a program, it's something like calls like this. We get on to share what's working for us, what's not working, and inspire other people, whether they're in the program or not. And we sometimes have really interesting people that just drop in and share. Last time we had Dan Willis, who has worked extensively with Marcel Vogel with crystals, and that was a whole world I didn't know anything about. It was just really interesting kinds of things. And I began to realize that not only, yes, create your own community around it, that the movement is that there's so many people around this planet who are actually um, doing things like this. Lynn McTaggart with her intention ceremonies, Joe Dispenza with having all these people, 1,500 people, a conference being getting in and actually working with their mind, with their breath, with their bodies to do these different things. We have the technology and we've just never been trained. It's like, oh, some weird spiritual woo-woo thing. I'm into all of this because my body's been guiding me and showing me this beautiful sacred space that we can go into in our bodies that changes the resonance, which helps me when I want to rip somebody's head off in traffic to pull myself back and pull myself together, you know? And just take a breath and track those things to just try to get all of the things out of the way that actually stops a really pure resonance from coming in is the healthiest thing for myself and for my community and for our world. With all the chaos that human beings are creating on this planet, we're human beings. And if we have the space and the ability eh, to actually go in and touch ourselves on that level and work on that level, we have a responsibility to do that. Because not only do a lot of people shy away from it because they think it's spiritual woo woo, it just happens to be exactly what spiritual sages have always said. The wisdom is inside, and it's turned into so many things. But it's such a simple statement of actually shedding away the pieces that aren't loving. And how can that be a bad thing to do? Um, so I've kind of lost my train of thought in wandering in through all of that. But the movement is certainly far greater than any program I'm putting together. And it's really all around the planet. And so any way that you're obviously here and listening to this or on the live call because you are interested or do things like this. And I just really I'm grateful for that year where I really sat and thought about like, what is this program? Because it really just showed me what matters to me most is exactly that. So that's why I'm going and doing some more self-study over the next couple of months. I'll be off air and offline for a couple of months while I'm learning more about the nature of voice and sound and resonant healing to bring that to unlock even deeper tensions in the body, which is my path of service and for me. Oh, thank you, Kat. She said your programs do change my life, new perspectives. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're enjoying that. And welcome, Wendy. I just saw you just came on. Adam just left. Wendy's come on. She's my teaching assistant. She's with us in France too. And yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to share um, anything at all. I don't know, Wendy, if you want to come on and say something, or anyone who is doing any of your own personal practice, if you want to share anything, or if you have any questions. Just I'll leave the floor open. Yeah, please go ahead.
Were you talking to me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I want to thank you as well. I've been following you for quite some time. When you started, actually, I found you through Nassim's work, and it took me a while to actually commit to it. But you've been a really strong inspiration for me and a model,
Awesome.
which So thank you for that. I've been working for many years now with how art and self-expression through color, texture, not like fine professional kind of art, but really expressing oneself can can release so much, and really mandalas especially can so deeply transformed. And I've had, why I got into that in 2004 or something was because I had a really sensory experience of it. Then I could not understand it, but I know it works. And I've been for many years tried to do it as a business, and then I stopped. And now I'm at a place where it's calling me again from a different place. And so I want to thank you for following your heart and following also, well, just doing it, because we can think a lot about it for a lot of time, but and I think you're really right on about so many things. Well, at least they resonate with me, about how the energy and the geometry of life, and taking care of ourselves, even if it's for about 5 minutes a day, which often will increase a little bit with time. And so in that way, I feel better about myself and how I'm another little pebble or water drop, and that also has an effect. So thank you for creating this community.
Oh, thank you so much for even letting me know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just writing into empty space. So it's always really nice to get feedback.
And so,
how,
yes, I'm on your part of the program, and I really enjoyed watching the videos. I liked how you put that together. I really liked that you also had the writing part. So, it's visual, but it's also, I can listen to it if I'm not in the mood to read. And then I always know that even though I'm not always doing it, I know you're there. Like, it's like, I wish we were closer. I miss that, having having people, like a real life community, which I do in some level, but at least we have each other, through space.
knowing that we're there. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm really glad to hear that because that's my intention too,
yeah.
and why I wanted to at least keep at least a quarterly call up where anyone can come, and it's sort of focused on with a theme around this because and it's so nice to hear that even if you're not doing it, that you know that I'm there, that the community's there, and that there are communities around communities there. And often I have this vision um, in meditation. It's a very blue-green color, but it shows me the connectivity of all of the people around the planet who are emanating that kind of field, and that it's very alive and it's very well. And every time we stop and we go into that, we're just adding to that. So that's great. I love the mandala work that you're doing. Do you have an area that you have set up so that you can drop into it anytime you want, or has it been something you've done and now you're going back to it because it's calling you in? What's your process with that?
I've been exploring it now for 20 years, but
Great.
and it doesn't always come anymore in a strict format of circle or square. Um, and I've been also working a lot with divine energy, and well, that's the powerfulness of working with the mandala, is the intention. So, and then the visualization in the heart. So you're kind of all there in body, and then you let it flow. So that's, yeah, I've been working at it in different ways. And now these days I've just been doing art with a lot of neurographica, which is kind of a really easy thing to do, where you scribble and then you color in the different areas. It's a little bit more than
Oh,
that,
I
but
think I've seen that though. I've seen that. Yeah, on
it's
online.
yes, and in a way, like mandalas, it really can give a sense that you've deposited something, or that something is coming back to talk to you, and you can never do it wrong, whatever the colors. I've worked a lot with the flower of life,
Mhm.
and if you look up flower of life mandala, for anyone on the call, it's it's a sacred geometry space that holds all of the geometrical elements of life.
Oh
And
yeah,
so,
it does for sure.
so it's a very, such a gentle process to color in and just not worry about getting it right, but just working with your intent, or so there's so many ways of doing that. But like yourself, I'm also on this road of I did notice that there were women sort of in my age range here that are, I'm just turning 61 soon, and it's kind of embracing the next step, not really quite knowing exactly where I'm going to be, but knowing that there's something more than what's, like, I've always been like this anyways, like I don't let society define me. And but I've always been like kind of not too woo woo, but kind of so I can fit in, but always exploring that side of the mystery and with curiosity. And a lot of what's coming up now is the sacred feminine and the witch, the in the traditional sense of the person that was the shaman, the healer, the seer, the doula, the all of those things before culture started, making it a bad thing. Or
Yeah, and before culture said that, like, if you didn't have it all sorted by 22, it was all over, you know? I mean, I find this time of life, having just gone through menopause myself and still going through the process, but that this sort of shedding is really amazing because it does bring us into that space of the shaman, of the witch, of the wise woman, of the and the more we're aware of our sensory experience, the more that becomes a reality that's actually very empowering. And it's not just a concept, and it's not just something that you try to hype yourself into. It's actually like, wow, it's been kind of weird letting go of certain things. Like a friend of mine we were at a, I guess you call it, I mean, a concert. It was supposed to, I thought it was more going to be more of a spiritual sort of thing. I really like the artist and I like what he's done online, but seeing him live and seeing all of the people there, it was a particular scene that I could no longer relate to. And I felt sad. I felt lonely. I thought, wow. And I had to really sit with that and kind of feel into why. And because it's like those were the parts of the scenes that through my 30s and my 40s, really I was into and enjoyed. And I'm glad I kind of worked through them. But it's the letting go of certain sensory experiences that you get so used to that you think, well, if you let it go, who am I? But there's this beautiful part of actually when you let go of that part, there's more space for the other pieces. And suddenly you can dive more into your mandala work, and the mandalas can give you more information. And speaking of which, before I forget, I don't know, not that I want to, we've got so many options of things we can do in this world. We're lucky, but I just want to let you know there's a couple of people that come to mind with the mandala work that if you're not familiar with them, I thought I would mention them in case you're interested. Scott Onstad and Jeff Fitzpatrick are business partners. Are you familiar with them? Yeah. So you know that Jeff does the head cleaning stuff, and he started with mandalas all over Ireland that he would draw. Okay, so you know him. They do sacredgeometryacademy.com or .org, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I love them. And then also in England, there's SAOG, and I forget what it stands for, but they do some amazing. I'd love to go over to England one day and do an immersive with them. And it's just all the drawing. And then, of course, there's Jonathan Quinton, who's a very good friend of mine who
Yeah.
created Universal Order, and he has the online program. But that was on Resonance Science Foundation. And I'm
I
just,
love him the most.
oh, do you? I'll let him
Yes.
know. He'll love to hear that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love his work, his energy, and how he's used his handmade work, and digitized it to it. Really, it's like a movie, well,
Yeah.
like a video,
Yeah.
but it's really beautifully, softly, gently powerful.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
beautiful work, and he also has wonderful things to say.
He does. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't want to take too much time with this
No,
because
I so appreciate you dropping in. That's what these calls are for. Anybody who wants to come in and just share, we always end up going down some sort of interesting rabbit hole. And so today we're covering um, chanting and mantras, and
So do you know of the work of Tom Kenyon?
I do. Yeah, I've seen him speak too. Uh-huh.
Okay. I've never seen him, but a friend of mine and I did a lot of work quite a while ago, just yeah, listening to his workshop and then to his music, and that, or his sounds, I should say, is it's really if you're kind of quiet before you start the sound work, it really it's brought me to really powerful places that still shape my life, mostly because I don't remember the day of or the exact thing, but it was so sensory that when I would hear something, my imagination would go somewhere where he might have suggested some kind of visualization. And then, yeah, it's still some of those elements are still with me in terms of like my imaginary friends, I guess. But
Right.
it's
Yeah.
very
But
powerful.
how does he share online? I mean, I've seen him speak before, and what I liked about him was he's very brass tacks. He's doing all of this channeling and this sound work. But when you hear him speak, he's just really practical, and I need that practical too. If it's too up here, I get lost in it pretty quickly. My left brain is it demands a little bit more over here to give my right brain permission to go and explore as much as it wants, sort of. So I
He's
really
really
liked
good
him.
with that. He's so he I guess he does have some free things online. It's Tom Kenyon with a K.
Yep.
And he uh, he sells some, I guess, some CDs or the equivalent online, and so he'll talk through in the beginning. He always says that the right brain people have to they know already what he's talking about, so we just have to be patient for the left brainers. So
Yeah.
I can relate to both the more logical, organized side and the more emotional, felt side. But I love that he's able to explain how the brain works, or he has one that's corpus callosum, like how that works. I love how he integrates male and female energy, and so right and left again.
Hmm.
And then he might talk about a story and have like a lesson that all kind of fits in. And sometimes he'll say to imagine something, or I think he also might have some visualizations where he actually brings. I seem to remember going down in a desert, either out of the ground and then finding something near the river, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there
Guided
are
meditation. Hmm.
very symbolic things. And then some other times he might just say, uh, you know, think of this or keep in mind this. And part of it is very fractal. It's like seeing yourself as one little bit, like when you're in this, like say by this time you're in space, so you're in the cosmos, and then relating to another object um, that's really far, like as like you become that one cell in your body, and that object that's way over there is another cell in your body, and so the space between that, which is
Yeah, it's
you
things
know
like that that are really kind of helping our consciousness expand to understand
exactly.
how to take us out of the parts and the
Yeah,
pieces.
in a
So,
way, Nassim Harriman also talks about that. It's like the space in between the things that we
yeah,
think
and
that
all the
things are so.
scaling. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just really just one way, but it's like you say, there are so many ways, and I
Yeah.
think as we age, women, I think that there's something that calls us,
Mhm.
and so and for me, it's like I've had a business for so long that um, it's almost like, well, I want to participate, but I don't. I want to change the format, and it's just kind of I love how you're doing a mixture of things. And anyways, I don't know how
Yeah,
exactly
it's
how to
just
describe.
following the thread. Yeah, and
Yes,
allowing ourselves to just kind of explore. And that's, really, I mean, to be able, Tom Kenyon, Kenyon, for anybody who wants to look up into his things. I mean, the whole point of these calls as well is to be able to share the information of other people. So we've already shared a lot of different things and different people and different kinds of links where you can explore things. The main thing I want to do is just encourage inspiration. So thank you so much, very, very much, Louise, for coming on and sharing yours. And I look forward to maybe seeing some more of your mandalas and different works of that nature. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I want to also just mention that I had put in relation to at the very beginning, I put up a link to a Spotify thing. If you don't have Spotify, it's a woman named Hannah Lee, Hanna, Lee, Leigh. I just recently discovered her. And the reason that I put up this one song is because when we're talking about chanting, one thing that I didn't talk about with Adam, but he and I have spoken about that before. When you're chanting, um, your tongue is hitting certain areas of your mouth. And that's known as well to be hitting certain meridians. And I find a lot of the chanting, or I've also done a couple of my own chants in a language that just seems to come in the last 10 years due to an experience that I had many years ago, probably 20 years ago, actually. And and I put those on some of my videos on YouTube. And sometimes people will not mention anything about the video, but say, "Who is that artist? What is that chant?" Because there's something about the chants, and there's something that happens in the mouth, and they just kind of come out spontaneously. But the old, Sanskrit texts and chants are designed for that. And so that song I was listening to last night while I was driving to the Snatam Kaur concert, and the words are Sat Nara Sat. I can't say it. I can only sing it. Sat Narayan Wahe Guru Hare Narayan Satanam. And so I wanted you to listen to that in your own time and really sit there and chant with it and feel what it's doing in your mouth, because it's that these sounds Satanam Narayan and Wahe Guru Hare Narayan Satanam, and you just keep chanting that with it, and you can feel how it's changing, shifting things in your body. So I wanted to leave that with you today. And if you're watching the recording, it's Hannah Lee, Leigh, and it's called Sat Narayan is the song on her Nourish album. She's also doing a little bit of she's trying to raise funds for her. I don't know her. I just ran across her, and I just know that she would probably appreciate me mentioning her name because she's also doing some fundraising to work on her next album. And lastly, I just wanted to, and Pam, I see you. I also have a link up there for our France retreat. We've got I only accept 10 people on that, and I haven't advertised it much. We only have 6 spaces left currently at this point. So if you're interested in that, just to know that there's a link there to read more about it if it's time for you to do something like that. And then Lynn, you asked me if I live in Toronto, Canada. I do currently. This is where I was raised, and I've been living in California for a couple of decades, basically. And I came back 3 years ago in order to be able to help my mom, who's 93 and is the founder of Somatic Stretch, the technique that I was raised in. And I taught a million classes in this room. It's a beautiful studio that I have the privilege of living in now. I moved in to the whole studio. I've got this amazing woman cave here. And I've given a million sessions in here too of hands-on body work. I was a shiatsu therapist and an acupuncturist from 94 onwards. So I am here, and I this is my base now, and I still have a bunch of stuff in California and a life down there. So I'm a little bit, but this is where I am to take care of my dear mom, who I believe is on the call today with us too. Hi, Mom. Yes, Pam, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is from the sublime to the really simple. The course that lots of the people here are on is which one?
Fractal frequencies, creating your own daily program. I can put that up. If you go to my homepage, geometryofhealing.com, and you scroll down, there are 3 signature programs.
Okay, it is one of those.
And it's one of those. And I can that's fractal anatomy. Where did this go? Fractal frequencies. I can just put the link up for anyone who's interested.
Where are you putting the link? Because I just clicked on
in the chat. It's called Fractal Frequencies, Creating a Powerful Daily Practice. And if you go to the bottom of your screen and you click chat,
This is weird. No, I'm looking at chat and I'm not getting yours.
No,
But
there it is.
oh yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, I feel better. Thank
You
you.
see it? Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go. And also, I should mention, I'm leaving October 7th and I'm going to leave it up. There's $150 off every one of my signature programs for September to just inspire people to just kind of keep on that path of stuff. I don't usually discount it that much, but I felt inspired to do that. So if you use the code season success, Season Success, SEASONSUCCESS, at checkout, you'll get $150 off the Fractal Frequencies program, or kind of my seminal program, Fractal Anatomy and the Geometry of Healing, or my Meridian Mastery program, or the bundle of those two. So you can get $150 off any of those until October 7th when I leave. And if you go to geometryofhealing.com and scroll down, those three programs are there.
Does it
I'm
matter?
also
Sorry, and then I'll stop. But does it matter to do them in any order, like anatomy before you do anything else, or?
I wouldn't recommend the Meridian Mastery program unless people are really wanting to dive into deep details about the meridians. So that's more for people who I think are on a deeper embodiment, bodywork, somatic, somanot path. That's what I would say about that. For people who are wanting to, I would say fractal frequencies. If you're just kind of being introduced to the work, I would say that program, because it does have the community connected to it. You have the program there to sort of go through. It gives you a familiarity with some different things around what's new that we know about the body. I put things about tensegrity in there, and meridians and fractals. Those are things that we don't really commonly know about the body, and I present them quite clearly so that you understand why we're able to understand different things about the body. And then it takes you into different ways and different kinds of methods and modalities that might be of interest to you, with information in and around it. And then again, of course, whether you're in that program or not, you can always come to these calls and ask questions or share. I keep it very open in that regard. The Fractal Anatomy and Geometry of Healing program is my 25 years of work. And I would say that that would be next up. If you're not really wanting inspiration for creating a daily practice and getting through that, the Fractal Anatomy program and Geometry of Healing is my whole journey of knowing nothing about geometry and just working through my body and working on other bodies. And I separated it into two levels so that people don't have to go through the whole thing. First level is for people who know nothing about or very little about geometry, or even if you do, what it might have to do with the body. It answers questions like, what is pi? What is phi? What is Fibonacci sequence? How are they connected? Who cares anyway? What does it have to do with anything? And then what does it have to do with like chakras, singularities in physics? Gives you a whole rounded thing about that, so that you understand why people are wearing geometry on their t-shirts and putting it on their logos and making everything from eyeshadow to chocolate using this word fractal, which is now a buzzword, when really it has nothing to do with fractals that they're advertising. It's just a cool word now. But why? And then the second level takes us into where the East and the West really meet. So Eastern concepts, meridians, nadis, Taoist dantians, different things of that nature. Wilhelm Reich's work in between the East and the West, and what we know in the Western from dermatomes and nerves and muscles. How do these things all interconnect? Why does it create geometry? How could it possibly create geometry? And how can you work with it in your own body? And I use somatic stretch, my lineage of that, to bring people through that process so that you can actually have a living experience of what the geometry has to do with it. And this morning's class, for instance, we did stuff about ergonomics and understanding the geometry that was created, which bizarrely enough, as we go along, just like drawing mandalas and different things and watching the process, imagine my surprise. I show this every time, but imagine my surprise when I mapped out sensory experiences. I was working on people and seeing angles run through and certain points coming up. And it was this very, very long process. It was about 15 years before it rose up enough that I could really see it was geometry. And then I was upset because I failed math in high school and I'm not geometry. Like, how can you give me geometry after all this time? And then I discovered that geometry is like poetry and it explains an entire concept. And that this is a fractal shape of what the geometry is in the body that I found, having no idea of any of these symbols. And then when I had it made and I spun it, it makes this amazing shape. So what does geometry have to do with the body? Well, this is just frequency. If you need to show the world what's in the world with all of the cosmic rays and the internet rays and the what would it look like in this invisible space that we're swimming in? And so it's like walking up to a fish and holding up hydrogen and oxygen and saying, here's an atomic structure that's geometric and this is what you're made of and what you're swimming in. The fish would be looking at geometry going, what? And that's kind of what we're doing. What is the geometry? We're actually swimming in a crystalline plasma, I learned when I put that fractal frequencies program together. So I would say first introductory would be fractal frequencies. It helps you ground what it is that you're doing and why you would want to do it. If you want to understand even more about all of that, do the fractal anatomy and geometry of healing and go right through to the end. I was blown away. I won't even go into it, but I mean, but it took me all that time. And then I wrote the final piece and I was given such an amazing piece of full circleness that it was very exciting for me. And then the meridian mastery is if you want to really do the deep dive as a bodywork therapist or somebody who's really particularly specifically wanting to know meridians, because they're kind of the next thing after chakras that are hitting the world and being kind of misconstrued and not really understood well. That would be
Can you explain a little bit, maybe also, especially with the trip coming to France and the interest in Mary Magdalene and that energy, how your work relates to the sacred feminine or to the sacredness of Mary
Magdalene?
Magdalene?
Good question. That's a really good question. Okay, easiest way to answer that. My work has been a journey of the body teaching me, and the body is my nervous system talking to myself, talking about itself. My nervous system is talking to your nervous system, talking about itself. So what part is Meredith and what part is the nervous system just communicating? We're already in a very fractal holographic hall of mirrors, if you will, even just there. And then we talk about the world like it's this thing separate from us. Like we're still in a very kind of Cartesian blocking things into areas. And what the body has taught me is that we're frequency. Just like the fish and looking at this geometric structure, it's frequency holding together oxygen and hydrogen. It's frequency that's creating the world. It's frequency that's creating the fish. It's frequency that's creating the sound coming out of my mouth. Everything is frequency. And if you wanted to share what the secret of frequency, if you wanted to share to a fish 5,000 years from now, through all the fish wars and all the fish bloodshed and all the everything going on with the fish world, which of course would never happen with fish because they're sane and we're just not. But you wanted to be able to leave a symbol that surpasses languages and cultural wars and histories and rewritten histories, but just a symbol that tells you what it's all about. You might just leave a symbol of oxygen and hydrogen in some cave somewhere that somebody would run across and maybe be able to figure out the key. And that's what sacred geometry has been taught to me by the body, that's what it is. It's showing us frequency and frequency, how it moves and morphs and fractalizes. And when our brain starts to see things like this, like watching in the program in fractal frequencies, I included some of Jonathan's work because he does these beautiful videos of of geometries morphing in and out. And when you watch them, it's very trance-like. And that's like your nervous system, again, watching itself watch itself. Your nervous system's frequency, it's watching frequencies morph in and out. And something happens in the brain, and the left and the right sides of the brain start to really communicate and create a bridge. Instead of acting like they're two different people struggling for dominance, there's this bridge of unification that moves through. And that opens up a doorway, just like chanting, just like prayer, just like meditation. When we get into this neural nectar zone, we hit the divine, for lack of a better word. So all of a sudden, what becomes very logical starts sounding very spiritual. And I'm not coming from any spiritual perspective. I'm coming from, I want to know what feels good in my body. I'd like to get rid of, the pieces that don't feel good, the depression I grew up with and lived with for most of my life, the addictive propensities that were there to hide the depression that were my crutches for my life. I wanted to get rid of those. I want to, I'm continually working to refine the edges of all of that. And in so doing, the space gets clearer, things get clear. And as they get clear, the sacred shows up. What is the sacred? The sacred is this neural nectar that I'm talking about, this sensory experience that I had in France that I shared, with my heart just kind of like blowing open and showing me this is the sacred temple. And this is what it feels like. And why I was so emotionally affected by it was because it was a sensory experience. It wasn't just a mental download. It was like a through my whole body. And I was like, wow. And it felt very feminine. Now we divide feminine and masculine up so much. The sacred feminine to me, like the Cathars, for instance, in the south of France, I'll just explain very briefly the history of that. The Cathars were all slaughtered by the church in horrible ways, as slaughter tends to happen. And basically, if you want to put the political argument simply, the church was wresting control, doing taxes, doing the whole thing, like saying, this is how you have to get to the neural nectar or you don't get it at all. And the Catholics were like, well, no. And we don't necessarily believe in, your cosmology as you've laid it all down. And we actually just want to, they were called perfects or parfaits, which is not a dessert. It's French for perfect. And they really just were following like how to live really quite ascetically, really, in order to be able to shed all the pieces and just be in a path of love. They just wanted to be in a path of love and a path of service. And they didn't want to adhere to anybody else's rules who said you had to do it a certain way. It's like, if it's not love, it's not what I'm interested in. And the controls and the constrictions were not what they were interested in. And they got slaughtered as a result. Now, if you wanted to divide that to masculine and feminine, which I think we do too much of, but the left brain loves that, which is the divine feminine and which is the masculine in that. Now, there's a divinity in the masculine of organized religion because it has a true intent to it. But when you're getting to the point of, I kind of feel like this is a bad example because it sounds like I'm, the divine feminine is a seed of what it means to you. It's that sacredness that we touch. And I don't think it has really a masculine or a feminine to it when we really get down to that. Like when I had that, it felt very feminine, but then the image of Christ, who's masculine, showed up with, pulling his shirt and pointing to the heart. And it's like, this is the temple. It was both of them there. Kathleen McGowan's books are beautiful because you can see the honoring of the masculine and the feminine together. The divine feminine is something that has been removed from us. And so to me, it just means putting it back and seeing it as part of the equation. So there is a wholeness there. Not that it's better than the masculine, but that you can't have the full sensory experience without both together. And so where is the divine feminine? We're trying to feel it and find it to put it back into the equation. And that, I think, in turn softens the masculine aspect where it's very left brain. The world is run and created in a very left brain way, and it needs more of the round edges of the femininity and the feminine wisdom in that. And I think that that's where we are as a culture and a species. That was a lot of words. I don't know if that answers your question or gives you an idea. Yeah. Okay.
It's a bit like the brain in a way. Like we never really are, even scientifically or biologically, we're never really only in our right or only in our left. And we're always it's always working together. And there's one that pulls us or one direction, but when we integrate both, that's when we become the most creative and the most healthy.
And that's another thing that happens when you weave the left. I keep saying this too. Thank you for reminding me that when you're weaving the left and the right sides of the brain together, huge amounts of creativity. I have my greatest joy. I can whinge a lot about certain things, but my greatest joy is the amount of creativity I have in my life. I'm a highly creative person and I love that. I'm never bored. If anything, I'm trying to take things off my plate because there's just new ideas coming in. It's the intuition kicks in. I have big decisions to make right now in my life, and ultimately I collect all the mental information I can, but I sit with what does it feel like? Where does it feel like that's the best way to go? And it gets heightened that way. I know that we're already to the end of our hour, and I don't want to keep people too long, but I just want to finish that thought. I saw a movie, I think it's on Gaia or Netflix or something. It's called Sensitive. And it's about highly sensitive people. And of course, there's an acronym for an acronym for everything these days. So it's HSPs. You could be an HSP. Most people who come and work with me are HSPs, highly sensitive people. What I loved about the film was, even though I know and I support other people who feel like why can I feel that the trees are happy, and is this normal? It's always nice to hear somebody say, yep, it is. It's totally normal. It gave me a sense of feeling like the stresses that I deal with, and the reason that I do this isn't because I have everything all sorted out. It's because I need it so much. I need it to be able to deal with my level of sensitivity that feels everything around me, feels the city energy, feels aggro, feels the political pressure of the chaos in the world that we're all feeling. It's so much to carry, and the more sensitive you are, the harder it is. And so I do all these practices to be able to be more of like a diamond under the pressure rather than feeling overwhelmed. And so that's always my course that I'm steering towards. And so I liked the show because it made me realize, which I already knew, but somehow in the weaving of it, it just made more sense. This is such a left brain world. And it makes it very difficult for right-brained people. If you've got a highly developed right brain, and it made me accept the fact that I do. That's what it did. I was like, I have a highly developed right brain. I mean, I've got a good left brain too, but yeah, like the struggle is that my right brain's like, can somebody please open the windows and give us some air? There's too many walls and roads and sound. And and most people I know are like that now too. So watch the movie Sensitive if you're an HSP or you think you might be. It's
Yeah. And
inspiring.
also to know that it's totally normal, and that 20% of humans approximately are highly sensitive, and that 20% of animals are also sensitive.
You saw
And
the film. Yeah,
yeah,
isn't that a cool
it
fact?
changed my life, and I've passed it on as information to my nieces and other sensitive people.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
yeah, and
That up.
the thing about being us is that um, we pave a way, because it's like we're the like sensing people, and then we also need the others who don't sense it as much, but who can be more of the doers, like the guys who work with asphalt and pave the roads. Like,
Yeah, and
I
can deal
couldn't.
with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
this was in the movie, and this is so important that 20% of the animal kingdom, no matter what the species is, has this ultrasensory thing, and that they are required to be able to do the alerts for all of the different things. And we need all of us in order to function as a healthy society. So suddenly it was like, it's okay that you're that sensitive. It's okay when you need to just check out and go lie down and take care of yourself. You're one of the 20% and you're needed in society. Beautiful way to end the talk. Thank you, Louise. I really appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. So great to see you all here. Thanks for another inspiring, fun time together. We'll do it again next quarter. I'm going to go off and explore some new things and bring them back. And I know you'll be exploring things to share with us next call. So um, thank you. And Lynn says, Dr. Tony Nader says, consciousness is everything. This is the title of his book, is Consciousness Behind All Frequencies. I think frequency is consciousness, and consciousness, I mean, you can't have anything without frequencies. It's just energy. Nothing exists without it. So consciousness that we don't understand, of our nervous systems, talking to your nervous systems, talking about themselves, are just frequency exploring itself.
what was
I
the
love you.
book that you keep referring to? The about chanting. Also, you talked about it in the beginning, Catherine, or sorry.
Oh, not about chanting. Kathleen McGowan.
Kathleen McGowan. Okay.
MC capital Gowan. That's about Mary Magdalene. The first book is called The Expected One. She
Okay.
is one of the foremost researchers on Mary Magdalene. Um, Beautiful books. She actually lives down in that same region, that and Egypt. And the second book is called The Book of Love. And the third book is about the Medici called The Poet Prince. And then there's a fourth book she recently came out with about Anne Boleyn. And so she's actually, she really lays out a remarkable interpretation of history through all the research that she's done. Well worth the read. Very amazing. I'm going to read them again. So that's actually reading that, and Patrice Chaplin, who married Charlie Chaplin's son. She lived in Girona when she was like 15 and a young wild kid exploring Europe back in the day. And Girona and Rennes-le-Château in this part of France are very connected. There's a lot of mystery around that whole area. If you've not read about it, those would be the books I suggest when people are coming to my retreat to come check out. And whether you come to the retreat or not, um, absolutely do read those books because you'll love them. Ket says, do come and live in France, Meredith, so I could visit you from Hungary. I will. I'd love to visit you in Hungary too. Thanks, Ket. That's great. Okay, so much love to you all. Thanks so much for sharing time together. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the ongoing community and all we do in the world to take a deep breath and try to ground some energy. Much love.
Mhm. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.